I'm Alex of All Trades, and this is the Sunday Book Circle for Jonathan Swift, His Life and His World by Damrosch. This nonfiction biography goes into as much detail as is possible to explain the master of satire, covering his parentage, including his murky parental figure, rocky childhood, academic success, strange health issues, unsuccessful clerical career in the Anglican Church and royal politics, obscure love life, and obviously the reasoning behind and reactions to his many satirical hit pieces against other political factions and the English mistreatment of the Irish. Almost everyone who has gone to college has read A Modest Proposal. I remember other students thinking Swift was serious about the plan to eat Irish children when I was in college, and I also taught it in one of my own courses. Students in that class also took him seriously, and it resulted in me writing a very long-winded blog post on how often satire flies over people's heads. That is also my most popular blog post, and has forced me to realize that people often equate intelligence, education, and poverty directly, which is utter bullshit. No, of course not. Those things are not synonyms, and I'm tired of people using them interchangeably. But back to the man of the hour. Swift was always a figure of historical sass to me, so I was a bit excited to learn more about his life. What I didn't expect was to connect to so much of his life, or for so much of the politics of 18th century England to feel exactly the same as the politics of 21st century United States. I'm not sure why, but I never really thought of Swift as a political figure, which probably has him rolling in his grave, as it makes no sense because A Modest Proposal is very much a political attack. The majority of Swift's work was political satire, which is funny and interesting to a modern reader, but becomes infinitely more important given the context of why he wrote any of it. Swift also had political aspirations and made friends with many people he felt he could agree with and use to gain more ground politically. Writing under a pseudonym, Swift was both known as the writer of these contentious works and protected from arrest for any possibly seditious interpretation, warranted or spurious. This was the most interesting aspect of this biography, and as currently people have a deep fear of being accused of what is essentially thought crime, and satire is so often misinterpreted. Only in Swift's days, that meant a trip to the Tower as a prisoner to be tried and exiled or executed, which is why even when tortured, his publishers would not give up his name. I remember thinking once that people didn't understand satire anymore. This biography proved that many people don't understand satire, and they never have throughout all time. Political opinions people don't like, even when viewed retrospectively 100 years later as ethically correct, are still hated if the loudest voices of the time are opposed to them. This explains why the number of pseudonym-attributed political and social writing has gone up recently, and honestly, it is a sign of less freedoms, something we should be fighting against. Writers are losing agents, and books are being pulled from publication because someone or a hassle of insignificant someones have gotten their panties in a bunch. To whom I say, metaphorically, pick your underwear out of your ass and grow the fuck up. Bringing back the Tower of London for political dissidents, i.e. artists you don't like, is not a worthy cause. I can look back on the political climate of Swift's time and recognize that it was a society not worth being a part of, one of great danger to the individual. So I would appreciate it if you would learn from history and stop being such an asshole. Jonathan Swift's political opinions and the fact that he could be a bit of a brusque companion with many eccentricities meant that Swift never achieved the aspirations he desired. His name is well known, as is his work as a writer, but writing wasn't the goal for him. It never was. It was the tool he was trying to use to advance his career. Swift never wanted to live in Ireland. He felt isolated there. He wanted to be a high-ranking religious court member, but his acquaintances often used and abandoned him, or he fought with them and had a falling out. I actually think that his writer's brain got in the way of his political goals, because he would often say or do things that would piss others off, no matter how smart, right, or funny what he said or did was. Swift couldn't help himself. He had to be witty. He couldn't demur. It wasn't in his nature. I admire that about him, but from what this book suggests, Swift was unhappy with how this affected his life. Swift seemed to both hate his fellow humans and care for them deeply. They often pissed him off, but he hated when they were being treated unfairly. This is something I relate to deeply, as people suck, have always sucked, and will always suck, but also deserve a chance at happiness and freedom of choice. This is the kind of attitude I can get behind, misanthropic and philanthropic, at the same time. I wish you all the happiness in the world, far, far the fuck away from me. Since I have my own digestive condition, I spent far too long trying to figure out what the fuck was wrong with Swift in relation to the conditions I know of. I came to the conclusion that I have no idea, but if I had to put money on it, I'd say he was a hypochondriac. I could be wrong. Digestive conditions are no joke, and if you don't know what's wrong, it is a lifelong hell of guesswork and pain. I can't tell you how much time I've lost down the toilet that is IBS. This part of the biography was very interesting because it also made me wonder if some of his irritability came from the pain or if the pain was brought about by his negative attitude. Something to consider. I would have never figured Swift for a ladies' man, and the idea that he had some sort of weird, quiet, years-long affair with a woman that some historians think may have been his half-sister is Jerry Springer levels of hilarious. I don't think that they were related, but I do believe he was very attached to Stella. I also think that he wasn't the type to marry. Some people are not cut out for marriage of any kind. Maybe the kind where the spouses live in different houses, but even that seems like it would have been too much for him since he also had some kind of relationship with Vanessa, which Stella maybe didn't like. What I find so cool about the relationship between Swift and Stella is their private language. Clearly, they liked each other for their minds more than anything, since they could sometimes go months without ever seeing each other, but also wrote each other regularly. The coffee being a euphemism for hanky-panky theory doesn't sound like bunk to me, especially when one has their actual references to coffee in front of oneself. There's no fucking way they were talking about the delicious caffeinated beverage. None. I do think they cared about each other, though, because I'm pretty sure it was a fit of grief that caused Swift to destroy his correspondence from Stella, which really is a shame. Though, at the same time, I feel a bit voyeuristic in my desire to read the letters of long-dead people. It's like reality TV for intellectuals. It's not much better, really. The differences are, I guess, that the subjects are 1, dead, and 2, of political or social importance. This kind of information makes these people more human, more real, than if we just looked at their less personal writings, which is sometimes hard to conceptualize. Maybe the discomfort of reading Henry VIII's letters to Anne Boleyn is a sign that the historical figures are refit into a human framework instead of just a political one. Though maybe I'm simply justifying my desire to read stuff like this. Either way, it was really intriguing and fun to read about Swift's weird love life. I feel a bit sad and maybe a bit hopeless when I see how much Swift accomplished with his writing and he still felt like a failure at the end of his life. I wonder that writers don't always feel this way regardless of success, as I have seen it in the biography of other writers as well. There's this self-defeating mindset in writers that nothing is ever enough. The voracious appetite for success, in whatever form it may take, or that they are measuring by, is never fed. Swift was popular and influential in his own lifetime, but since he was solely focused on a political career, he was unhappy with all of it. He had no gratefulness for any of his successes, any of his influence. Is this an issue of being a writer? Is this an issue of being an artist? Is this kind of horizon chasing inherent in the act of creation? Can the chase itself be the goal? I worry that while even being aware of it, I will fall prey to this unending need for getting more and more out of my career, in the same way some companies think there is no peak to the mountain, that growth is eternal. On a conscious level, I know this to be untrue. I know there is a summit. I also know there is always room to better myself in my work. but that doesn't mean that I will not also become mired in never-ending ambition. Hold on, I think I'm having an existential crisis. Should you read this biography? Yes, but I'm a big proponent of reading history because I feel like it can give a sense of comfort in how much society has changed and how much human beings are the same. That sounds like a contradiction, but people are always people, so history tends to repeat itself. That is, if you are not willing to learn from it. I said in my last book review that people who want you to forget the historical past are trying to manipulate you. So the best way to fight against this is to take an interest in the past. Another comfort in reading history is seeing how society has made some improvements. Progress is not necessarily linear, but I would say our times are better than Swift's times. If anything, they aren't sending political and social dissidents to a Tower of London-style death. Yet. This biography is very well written, gives a lot of interesting insight into Swift, and is also entertaining on top of it all. If you've not read it, are there other Jonathan Swift biographies you would suggest? If you did read it, what did you find most interesting in this biography? What did you think Damrosch got wrong? How so? What didn't you know about Swift before you read this book? What do you wish I had brought up? Please leave your comments below. Would you like to see what I'm currently reading? Follow me on goodreads.com/outsfalltrades to see what I'm reading right now and what book reviews you can expect in the future. I've made a Discord. I'm on it all the time and you're all invited to chat with me. There are channels for video games, movies, TV shows, books, and writing. Even a place for you to promote your own things. Join me there. Everyone is welcome. Merch, 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 merch. Yeah. Check out my new shop at cafepress.com/outsofalltrades for all kinds of products with my face on them.